accomplish the things he's done on the football field, but then to accomplish what he's done professionally in his life, obviously married and a couple kids, but I couldn't tell you how excited we are to have him come in and speak to the crew. I talked to him earlier this week, just, a guy that has walked in outer space, right? Been on some missions and some things in the bigger picture that's just really cool. I can't wait for our guys. I know I just spoke to them about him coming in and speaking to them. I think Blake and a couple guys talked to him last year when he was actually on one of his missions in space. So great opportunity for our guys to learn from somebody that's got a bigger picture than just football. From a health standpoint, I shared with you the other day, Chase Brown's been cleared. He'll be good to go with us all week. Still waiting on the status. We think we're trending in the right direction for Jake Hansen, but don't have final approval on that yet. DJ Barker, who was very limited for us last week, even though he was cleared, he just couldn't function in the actual things we asked him to do. So he'll be with us full go. Been with us all this week. Very excited to have him with us. And then just overall, I think our guys from a health standpoint just much better than where we were a week ago. So Spoon is a waiting to see decision on game day as well. So those two are pending status for Saturday. I thought our crews put in a good work week. Charlotte presents some very unique challenges for us, both offense, defense, and the kicking game. Excited to get to Saturday at 11 o'clock, play a home game and see where our guys are at. So I've had a good week of practice and like the plan, like where our guys are at, and we'll see where this thing goes. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
Hey, Brett, I wanted to know what types of challenges do you think Chris Reynolds presents? He's kind of like the heart and soul of that program. What I've read, their rise and things like that.
Yeah, James, I think two things. First, he's got a lot of experience, right? He's been there and done a lot of really good things. He definitely is their signal, not just their play caller on offense, but you can see him do a lot of stuff at the line of scrimmage. Very accurate passer. He's got weapons really all around him at the running back position, at the wide receiver position. I think the thing that jumps out to me, you can tell the coaches invest a lot in him. They try to get a lot of perfect play scenarios at the line of scrimmage. You'll see him make some reads during the course of a game, whether it be this year, last year, the year before. He does a lot of really good things that happen post-snap. Anytime you can see a player make good decisions after the ball's been snapped, you can tell he's been trained the right way, coached the right way. So, yeah, he presents, and then he's got the ability to run. He's not maybe the same thing as we faced in some of the other games, but he stays alive on early downs. He makes some third down scrambles. They run him in the QB run game, especially in critical moments. So he's a very, very tough task.
Yeah, Coach, it's still technically September here, and you're approaching the midway point of your season. Just overall, how would you evaluate these first 5 games going into the 6th game?
Yeah, Robert, I think at first, we made the conscientious awareness, right? Like we've played more football than most people in the country, right? Like us, Nebraska, the teams that were in week 0 because of when we started, and then because of week 0 and playing every game since then. And, having 3 Big Ten games under our belt, we've taken more snaps than a lot of people. So we have to be aware of that in our preparation. Obviously been a little bit banged up from a health standpoint, but I would say through these first 5 games going into week 6, I think we as a staff know our roster a little bit better. Sometimes, basically because of injuries, getting new guys into roles. In that first game, I kind of had a tell of how things were going to roll. CJ Hart was a guy that we added as a transfer, came in and impressed us, put us into a starting role, was playing very well. He gets a season-ending injury, and the next guy that's got to jump into that role is Tariq Barnes, who I think has made steady progress and moved forward. So that's kind of one position, but that's kind of what we've gone through at every position. What do we start with? Where are we at now, game 5? How do they understand us as coaches? How do we understand them as players? How's the communication working during the week? How does communication work for us on game day? So just a lot of things we've had to work through for the first time, but we're making progress. Obviously, the wins and losses haven't gone the way we want them as players or coaches or as fans that you want them, but I would tell you this, we've definitely made progress.
Brett, the other day you talked about the attention given to the quarterback position. Obviously, we ask about it a lot. Because of that attention and the importance of that single position, do you have to manage that position any differently than other positions? And if so, how?
Absolutely. 100%. I think in my 13th year now as a head coach, every obviously I've had a couple guys that started multiple years, but I would even say within that, you treat that quarterback how you get to know them and how they respond, right? I've said this from day one. I think I might have even said this earlier in my pressers here that like, as a head coach, when you talk about a position, everybody's going to take note. It's covered. It's definitely highlighted. But when you're talking about the quarterback position in particular, it's something that gets magnified by 1,000. I often tell them when we're recruiting them as coaches, and when we're in the recruiting process with their parents, as a quarterback, my mission as a head coach is to always protect them, right? Like when we have success, they get way too much credit beyond what's probably real. And when they have failure, they get way too much blame as a standard. I'm not saying that's always true, but I think just overall, people are hypersensitive one way or the other to quarterbacks. As head coaches, they're kind of seen as the face of the program. So without a doubt, I learned from my first quarterback, John Stocco, to where we are today with my relations with Brand Peters and Art. You get to know those guys, you get to know the environment, and try to put them in a position to have success.
Obviously, you got to have the physical tools you guys want in a quarterback, but what is the intangibles they have to succeed in, especially in a Big Ten spotlight?
Yeah, I think again that depends a lot on the roster around them, right? So, I think a lot about my first Big Ten championship. Like you always kind of go back to what's the standard? Where do you want to get? My first Big Ten championship was before there was a Big Ten championship game, so we won it outright during the season. And a quarterback was a guy by the name of Scott Tolzien, who was, I believe, committed to Toledo. We offered him maybe a day or two before signing date. He comes in, doesn't really play his first 3 years, but he ends up taking us to a 10-win season in his junior year and then a Big Ten championship his senior year. Scott had a lot of really good players around him, right? He was a very accurate thrower. He was a military background. Mom and dad raised a very disciplined young man that, like, literally, if I cut 10 minutes out of practice, he wanted to know why. He wanted every rep, all right? So I win my first two Big Ten titles. My first Big Ten title with him. And then the next year, the first Big Ten championship game season is with Russell Wilson, who obviously is a guy that's got extremely talented a live arm. He's got great vision, has the ability to make things when it's at its worst, make it at its best. You managed him totally different, or at least for me, being that first year with him, learning him, understanding him, realizing his strengths and weaknesses. And then the next year, literally started three different quarterbacks in a Big Ten championship season that you had to kind of transition by week. We lost Joel Stave in the first week of the Big Ten season. Then I transitioned through two different quarterbacks to get to the Big Ten championship year and the championship game and to ultimately win it, put up a lot of points against Nebraska to give us our third straight Big Ten title. Each one of those quarterback stories was different, right? And they got handled differently. That's just the fact of it. So you got to know your quarterback. You got to know the situation. You got to know the environment. And the biggest thing you want to do is make him have a confidence to have success, but also the players around him.
Thank you, Bret. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Brett, I wanted to ask you about the guy you lined up with number 47 last weekend. I wanted on offense. I just kind of wanted to ask what you thought about Alex's performance in that spot that you put him in, and what leads you to the coaches to kind of throughout practice to go, hey, I think he can help us here and in this spot as you kind of go along throughout the season.
Yeah, I think twofold. First, we realize and understand the roster that we have and what we want to do. We felt last week that if we could get in some 13 personnel, get bigger against Purdue in certain situations to cover up the edge and to take number 5 and neutralize him. Like a lot of times he was very productive when he was on an open side, or if you were allowed to put him in certain situations. So we really wanted to take 5 out of the ball game last week. George is a very talented player. So by formations, I thought Tony and the offense staff did some really good things. He was a factor really on the third play of the game when he had a strip fumble, but then he really didn't factor into the game as it played out in front of us. And that was by design and the formations that we did, but also the personnel. So Pill was used as a extra large tight end. He was one play away from having to go inside, but last week we utilized him in a big tight end role. And it served its purpose. This week we'll move him back to guard and get him back into more guard type roles for us going into this game. But other players we just don't have the amount of tight ends that I think you need to have in Big Ten play to do what you need to do. So we're trying to invent that by, giving a lineman an opportunity, or maybe other positions, a D lineman or a linebacker into that role. I moved Marquise there last spring. It's just he didn't have the physicality that we needed at that position that weekend.
Whether it's doing that or moving the guys that you've moved to wide receiver, or with your roster optimization, are you happy with the way the coaches have kind of tried things and kind of created situations for guys to maybe be more successful throughout your roster now that we're 5 weeks in, 6 weeks in?
Well, so we have a roster of about 115 to 120, depends on who's healthy. And then within that, then we got a 74-man roster that we really, home or away, even by Big Ten rules, when we have a home game, we can only travel 74 to our team hotel. So you're really looking at game day having a roster of 74. You take out 6 specialists, so you're down to 68 players. So really about 34 players on both sides of the ball. Traditionally, you probably have a few more offensive players than defense. We got about a core of 5 or 6 guys that we have as our 4 core: Eric Prather Hudson, and a couple other players, Christian Boback, Sean Coughlin, a guy like Kirby was in that role, where those guys are mainly special teams player roles. So you really get down to, okay, who can help us offensively and defensively? And if they're not in the plan, I've always tried to press our guys, like, how can this person, even if it's for one play, one snap? And that's really how Seth Coleman started, right? We thought we could get him in one specific package, and he did very well, and that grew to where it was. Same thing with Josh McCray. He wasn't ready for the full gamut in week 1, so we didn't even play him. And then in week 2 against UTSA, we used him on early downs and on specific roles, and he's progressed nicely. But if we try to do what we did with Josh McCray at Purdue in game 1 against Nebraska, it wouldn't even be a blip on the radar. So yeah, as coaches, we got to constantly do that and maximize our roster. And part of that is getting to know our roster in game-like situations.
Thank you, Bret.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Bret. You guys have struggled in the passing game the last couple of weeks. And, just kind of watching Brandon throughout his career at Illinois, it seems like, and this is probably true for a lot of quarterbacks, but it seems like he needs to get in a rhythm early in games to be able to really be effective. I'm just wondering, is there anything you guys can do for him early on this week to get him running and in a rhythm?
Yeah, I think twofold. The Nebraska game before he got knocked out, he was actually 3 for 4. So he was, starting off fairly well there. The 2 games that he started now coming back for us, obviously, to not be able to score in the first quarter is frustrating. I think everybody points to the quarterback, much to the question we had earlier. But everybody has to be better. For the quarterback to throw better, we got to protect him better. We got to be able to catch it better. We got to be able to call it better. I think the mission that everybody's going into this weekend for Saturday is for us to play Brandon Peters better in the first quarter offensively. We got to have everybody else be better around him. And it's a unified approach. And as soon as that happens, then you'll probably see the better results for all of us.
Hey, Coach, I'm obviously no football expert like you or any of your staff members are, but you and your coordinators have both spoken this week about how much Reynolds does in directing the offense that Charlotte runs and making different calls at the line of scrimmage. Coach Walters talks a lot about knowing keys and preparation. How difficult, or how much more difficult does it make it to prepare for an offense that maybe changes so much at the line of scrimmage?
It's different for every game you play in, right? So to use your analogy, right, like that's the scheme and the fit that Will and his staff have put together for Charlotte, right? There's going to be teams that we play that don't do anything at the line of scrimmage. They may check occasionally at a defensive look. There's going to be other teams that fall halfway in between that. There's going to be teams that run it exactly like Reynolds does. So it's really not right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just you key your guys into the task at hand. And Purdue last week, scored 2 field goals and remained scoreless until the fourth quarter. And they did the same exact system, not the same plays, but same exact mechanics as we're facing this week. There's nothing new this week versus last week at all. The only thing is this guy's a multiple year starter and has been their main guy all week. Last week we really didn't stress or talk about the quarterback because we didn't know which one we were going to face.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, Brett, on Monday, Ryan talked about getting his, I'm thinking he meant more defensive backs, but to pull the trigger and since just kind of trust what you see the first time and go for it. Is that, as more games pile up, is that what you go back to at Virginia, like the confidence thing, or is it a mix of both?
It's probably, Joey, I would say first you got to be able to identify the moment to pull it, right? So it's kind of the cliche, right? Like everybody learns at different rates. Everybody, learns different reactions. By some guys that I've been around in the business learn very well through film. Some people can't process it all through film. They need to walk through it. Some can walk through it and get it, but others got to actually get the rep full speed to get it, right? So it's part of the process to learn where we're at. It's always interesting when the NFL guys come through and they ask you questions about players, and one of the leading questions that usually every scout will ask you is what type of learner is he, right? And what they're asking is he a visual learner? Is he a process learner? Does he have to learn through game reps? Can he get 5 walkthroughs and get the same reps or get the same effect of a live game rep? And it's every kid's a little bit different. They've been raised in different homes. They got different backgrounds. They have different learning mechanisms. Today's world, you have so much individualized teaching for kids and how they learn away from the game of football, but that actually does apply to the way they learn football. So it's really just getting to know your roster, getting to know how your players react, and then also just, coaching them, right? Like you can coach a kid out of a situation, right? Like if you make them so nervous that they don't want to make a play because they don't want to make a mistake, on the same account, you can have a kid that maybe you got to get up in his grill and let him have a little bit of hot sauce just to get him to respond the right way, right? Every kid's just a little bit different, and unfortunately, you got to learn that.
Thanks, Brett.
Yep.
Hey, Brett, this season we've kind of only seen the backfield of Chase Brown and Josh McCray for only a half, with both of them healthy this week. And on the surface level, they kind of seem like the same bruising kind of back. How do you kind of work out how each of them runs different and how you can work each of them into the run game?
Yeah, good point. I think Chase, we're still kind of working through that, right? Like there's been 2 games he hasn't been in, and like you mentioned, he's been out of 2 games early. So Chase, I will say this, just his, all of the things I've learned about him, the intangibles, all the preparation. He's excited to get out there. He does have one advantage to not being able to go lately has been fresh legs, right? Like he just looks like a different gear out there. I do think they're a little bit different. I think, Chase is more of a every down back, first, second, third down, has ability to be a little bit more probably burst and maybe on the perimeter and do some stuff in the throw game. Josh is probably a traditionalist, first down, early down back, does have soft hands. He's a guy in the kick game back there catching kicks. He just got incredibly big mitts and catches the ball really well. But again, he's a true freshman entering his 6th game, his 5th game that he's actually played in. He's just not quite at the same maturity level as Chase. And then I think the good thing for us, we also have a guy like Jakari Norwood that can kind of come in and is completely different than both of those guys. All 3 of them a little bit uniquely different, but I would agree with you. Chase and Josh are a little bit more married. Jakari's a little bit different, and then and Reggie's probably kind of a blend of the 3.
Thanks, Brett.
Yeah.